coffee. So, but yeah, I hate being late for people. Hey guys, how is everybody? How is everybody today? How is everybody today? Rebecca hasn't come on yet. I do have uh Mary on. So Mary, just so you guys know, I don't want to repeat myself, but just so you know, Mary, explain what it is that you do. And guys, I just want you to know that Mary sent me her credentials. I've destroyed them, but I verified. I saw them and I destroyed them because I don't want to have that in my. I don't want to be responsible for that. You know what I'm saying? So I just needed to make sure that you were who you said you were.
No, of course. I mean, it's a medical license. I'm actually, I'm an emergency room physician, but also trained in primary care as well. So, like, for example, I just got off. Actually, I just worked 7P to 7A. So I just got off about an hour ago from the emergency department. But I've also done Suboxone treatments since, for folks, gosh, since about 2006. So when it really, probably at the infancy of it coming out. And so, know a good bit about it and have a lot of experience with it.
Right, right. Okay, let me just go grab my phone, which is over there, and the coffee that I just brewed, and I'll be right back. I'll just be a second. I want to reach out to Rebecca and just make sure that she's all good and stuff as well. So, um, hang on 1 second. My apologies. I should make this at 9:30 in the morning. I guess not at 9. Nine's hard when I work on Sunday nights, and I work on Sunday nights. I worked on Sunday nights. Usually I'm off on Sunday nights. So let me just reach out to Rebecca and see if she's anywhere. If she's a coming anywhere. Hang on 1 second. Hang on. So you said that you now treat people with
with addiction, and we also use it for pain management as well. I mean, had a pain man. I forget when they. I want to say pain management came on with. Well, it's buprenorphine is the generic, and that was probably around 2010. But they end up having a patch, and we also sometimes use the other. There's pills, of course. There's the strips. I'm not a fan of the strips, mostly because of privacy purposes. I don't like the strips. I don't think that's fair to folks.
Okay, so hang on 1 second. Rebecca's here. Hi, Rebecca. How you doing?
Hi, good morning. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm thinking maybe we should make this at 9:30 in case I work on Sunday nights, which I did.
Oh, we could do that. That works.
Yeah, it might be better. So this is Mary, and Mary does a lot of the Suboxone treatments, and she was just talking about that. So
Oh, okay.
So if you, can you just explain again? I'm sorry. I'm sorry
No,
about
no
that, Mary.
problem. No problem. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I also do primary care. Actually, my training was primary care, but of course, emergency medicine was always my passion. I was also in the military. The Army actually paid for my medical school. Um, and so I, like I said, I just happened to work last night, interestingly. Just got off actually about an hour ago and just drove home. Um, but so I started treating folks with Suboxone, which the generic would be buprenorphine, in 2006. And that's about the time when it was really in its infancy. Like, it wasn't super popular. It actually came out legally. I mean, and I'm talking like probably in small groups in 2002. But it didn't become sort of mainstream. I think it was limited to maybe psychiatrists in 2002. And then it became more mainstream about 2006. So not only did I help folks with it, but I also trained other physicians in providing it to their patients. And of course, then it was actually made a little differently. Then it was a little orange pill that was good under your tongue, which was great. I actually like that a little better. The strips I don't like, only because they say Suboxone all over. I felt like there was a bit more privacy in having the little pills. If people see that in a jar, you don't think anything of it. When they see Suboxone sitting on, if you throw a strip away, it just sort of, I feel like it defeats the purpose of the privacy, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I feel like
Mhm.
people, that's really a big thing. I think they should be private. So, like,
Okay.
for example, if somebody's on it, and there's other ways, because now that it's generic, there are other ways, but the general way folks will get a strip, and it comes in, it's like those mint things, little mint strips that you sometimes use for as a breath freshener.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
looks
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Those fresh breaths. They're called fresh breaths.
Mhm.
Hang on one
right,
second.
except,
Christy Lee just email me. Because I didn't get that. Just email me, Toddie1skip@gmail.com. Sorry about that, guys. Milo, stop. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
no, you're
Somebody
fine.
just said, please answer, reply yes or no. Okay, so I wanted to do that. Go ahead. Yep.
So yeah, I didn't like when they transitioned to the strips, because I was like, well, the strips are fine, except that they came in these individual little packets, and I felt like, you know, now you've destroyed the whole point of this was to have privacy, and now we took that away. And I just didn't like it. It just was something I didn't like. I mean, I'm sure other people will probably find, they may be fine with it. I felt like for my patients, it just wasn't, didn't provide the same amount of privacy is all.
Right. So what is it about Suboxone that you prefer over? We have somebody here on like methadone. So what do
Okay.
you think the benefit is?
Oh gosh, huge benefit. Methadone, first of all, is the government actually prefers methadone, mostly because they control it. Now, methadone was the original, when we had heroin back in when heroin was really big, like during Vietnam. And methadone did serve a purpose, and it was very good. The problem with methadone is it does get you high, and it is very easily diverted. So that's a problem, a big problem. And then, of course, you can, with the methadone, you can really you increase the dose, and I've seen this happen. It's really pretty horrible. Well, let's increase the dose to some ridiculous amount, and then folks are like trapped on this forever. Plus, most folks have to go to the place every single day. So that
That's
means no
correct. Yeah.
vacation. It's very, very challenging.
Right, right.
Where I feel like there's again a different level of privacy with Suboxone. Also, Suboxone has what we call a ceiling effect, meaning that now, I'm not going to lie, people will say that they get a little bit of a, not a buzz. I don't know that they get so much of a buzz, that they just feel better, that they don't feel bad, if that makes sense.
Well, here's somebody saying, so there's somebody in the chat and they're saying, I've never been high on methadone, but I've been high on Suboxone. And I have heard that people have been high on Suboxone, but I heard that, it's the pill, like somebody else mentioned, that they could crush and take, where the strip, you really can't do that. You know what I
Well,
mean?
actually,
So,
I've seen people freebase the strip, actually.
oh God.
So I've seen it go both ways. Now, Suboxone, to be fair, when this originally came out, the original studies, interestingly, said for anybody's person, regardless of what level of addiction you had, the dose was 4 milligrams. That's a half of a strip. Regardless of your size, regardless of your addiction, for anybody's receptors, 4 milligrams was sufficient. Problem being, though, as we moved along on this, and as the drug reps were pushing this, of course they want to sell more. So next thing you know, they're doing twice a day, 3 times a day. So you're talking 16, then 32, 24, whatever. That was not the purpose of this. The purpose of this was to go 4 milligrams, stay low. If you stay low, I find it very hard to believe that anybody would get high on that. I just haven't seen it clinically, and I'm talking thousands of patients over, again, not quite 19 years. So that's a long time. And 4 milligrams. Now, yes, there's no doubt it still has a ceiling effect, even if you get the higher dosages. I mean, initially you may get a little bit of a buzz, but once you it levels out, and then that's
Mhm.
that. But methadone is very, I mean, people are all the time, methadone has a street value. To be fair, Suboxone does too, but
Okay,
most folks,
so I'm being told that maybe we should do like a trigger warning here. So I respect
sure,
that.
sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Trixie. Thank you. No, that's on me. So thank you. Yeah, okay, so trigger warning, guys. Anybody that, but still anybody that needs help and needs to learn how things, what's what and stuff. Sometimes those phone calls are hard to make, and maybe there's some information here that you can get. But I'm not a doctor, and I can't give you any medical information. This is just conversation. So okay.
No, of course,
So,
I mean, the 4 milligrams, honestly, and that's honestly, the rehab centers do the same thing. They start at that dosing. Actually, sometimes they'll do 6, but usually it's 4. And that's where we go. And if you start there, we have a much higher success rate. I found in Alabama, for example, I had a very high success rate. In Florida, the success rate was not as good because they were giving so darn much of it. And it was hard to compete with that when people were getting 16 milligrams or 24 milligrams a day. It was just too much. And that was
yeah.
challenging.
Why would they be doing that? Why would somebody be prescribing that amount?
Well, because the drug reps would push that. That I was in the early studies. I'm not that I was in them, but I learned about the early studies when we did 4 milligrams. Now, as you can imagine, if you have a drug rep, they're going to, the more they sell, the more money they make.
It shouldn't be like that when it comes to
No, of course not.
medication. Like,
Of
look at
course
that's what
not.
happened with the OxyContin.
Of
Right.
course. I mean, it was absurd. You got 80 milligrams of OxyContin. I mean, it got to be absurd. And I remember
Yeah.
those days too. I was in residency when that all came out. So I remember I remember them telling us, oh gosh, no, this is not addictive at all. Get your folks off of hydrocodone, put them on this. And we all know what happened there.
Yeah, it was a lot worse than that.
Yep.
A
Oh
lot
dear God.
worse
I
than that.
mean, we saw people stuffing in their IVs in the hospital. I would see folks get medicine and literally crush up their meds and try to stuff it in their IV, even though it was a pill. It was crazy.
Right. Wow. That's unbelievable. And 80 milligrams. Aunt Edna says 80 milligrams. I mean, like, that's it. When you put profit over people, that's what
Right.
happens.
It's over. Like I
Absolutely.
said, I had a gal, actually one of the doctors I worked with, his wife had knee pain. She was probably 35, let's say, at the time, maybe. And
Right.
she was on 8 of the 80. So 640 milligrams a day for knee pain. Okay.
That's criminal.
Terrifying.
That's
It is
criminal.
absolutely criminal.
That's criminal. That's absolutely
Mm.
criminal.
She has no chance. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's not that she has no hope, but it's very difficult. Very, very difficult
Mm-mm.
to get folks off that. Now, thankfully, and she was doing that in the days before Suboxone was an option. So she, you, she was strung out. I mean, it was a difficult there. I mean, if she didn't get what she needed, she was going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
If she got half of what she needed, she was going to have a bad day.
So what's the answer? I mean, like, what's the answer to that?
Well,
Does somebody um how does somebody like wean themselves off? How does that happen?
okay, well, that's, to be fair, honestly, where I learned the most and is initially, obviously, the early studies I liked. Later on, I learned a whole lot from my addicts. They teach me everything. They teach
Right.
me all the tricks. And so they'll tell you, this is, when you've got a strip, this is how you cut back. The biggest, and it's interesting too, because the biggest jump is from 4 milligrams to 2 milligrams. And so they're correct that 4 milligrams was the magic dose because, and I've, again, thousands of patients have said the jump from 4 milligrams to 2 milligrams, if they've been out, let's say, for a year or something, is the biggest hurdle because everybody's person, even if they were on, let's say, heroin, even high doses, they, that hurdle from 4 to 2, it changes things. because 4 is the max amount that anybody needs. But again, drug companies play their games, and this is what happens.
I know somebody that went to get treatment just recently, and they were put on so many extra drugs that, I mean, their detox, it didn't even take effect and didn't even really start until like a couple months into it. Like, it was
No, it's
ridiculous.
absolutely brutal. If, like I said, I had folks that literally were on methadone, on heroin. I had probably an extremely high success rate, like 95% or better, which is insane because you don't get that. You do not get that this day and age. But in the beginning, because we were dosing properly, but when they started giving so much, it was so hard
Yeah,
because
I can imagine.
everybody, they were, you got, again, that you get the drug reps training. They're saying give 16 milligrams. I argue with psychiatrists, and I'd say, well, I don't care if you wrote a book, I don't care what you did. I'm telling you clinically, I've seen human beings, and I'm telling you what works. And they, again, they can write a book, they can do whatever they want. That's very different than actually seeing human beings and putting them on the medicine and seeing it work. And that's just what we did. Now, methadone was always a tricky one to go from methadone to Suboxone because methadone has an extremely long half-life. It's got
It has what? I'm sorry, it has what?
an extremely long half-life, 72 to 96 hours.
Oh,
And if
wow.
you've been on a long time, longer than that, okay? So
Wow.
some
Wow.
folks, I would have to put them on something else. That's where tramadol came into the picture. Tramadol we
Mm.
used to use for folks transitioning from methadone to Suboxone. We'd give them just in whatever. We'd give them, let's say, 100 of tramadol and say, take whatever you want. Doesn't matter, which is instantly how it became controlled. Um, it's an antidepressant by chemical structures, an antidepressant. But
Right. Wow.
um, and so we'd give them that and say, hey, take whatever you need. Because we wanted to get them through so we could get them to the point where we could transition them. Because if you transition them too soon, they go into immediate withdrawals and it's brutal. And we don't want to do that to anybody, obviously. So,
Wow.
I mean, sometimes it would literally take a week, sometimes 10 days if they were on methadone a long time to transition to Suboxone. But Suboxone is a heck of a lot easier to manage. I believe it works better now, but people have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to get a high. You have to be content with not being in withdrawals. And that is a battle. I mean, there's no doubt.
Wow. Wow.
And then
Wow.
it's another great thing. The other thing that I found that was fascinating is the other first thing you want to do with folks, if you can do it, is getting them down to once a day dosing. Once a day dosing, there's something magical about that because most folks, when they take drugs, don't take it once a day. They do things numerous times a day.
Right.
With the
Right.
And so if you can get them down to once a day dosing, and it was kind of funny for folks to come in and say, I forgot to take my medicine today. Drug addicts don't ever forget. They don't forget
That's
their
true.
drugs.
That's true. I mean, absolutely. That's absolutely the truth. That.
Your best pill takers take their pills 80% of the time. That does not count as it pertains to that are addicts. They just don't. They do not miss a day because if they miss a day, it'll beat them up.
Right. Yeah.
And
No.
so there's definitely, an issue there. And so, like I said, it's to me, it's very much about education. And it's frustrating that we've lost the educational component of it. And, now that we do it for pain management as well, you'll find that Butrans patch, which is the patch we use, it has, I think, I want to say the max dose is around 10 milligrams a week, something like that. So you can see where that's very low. Talking like 1.5 a day or something. You don't need very much to go a long way if it's done properly. But if you
Wow.
start somebody out at a high amount, yes, they will absolutely feel a buzz. But then they're stuck on this high amount. Then it becomes tricky to get them off of.
Wow. Wow. Hmm. A lot of people are saying that they had issues with tramadol and stuff. I have to take this phone call because I had an issue this morning with family something happened, I'm going to take that. Can you guys continue onward?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Just
Yeah.
go ahead and continue onward. Hang on a second on the phone. Just hang on a second on the phone. All right, give me just I'm going to shut my
No,
camera.
no, take your, that's fine. You're fine.
Okay, and I'm going to
So, like I said, that's where, like I said, in the early days, it was very, very easy. The later days when they were giving, 3, 4 strips a day, what I
Mhm.
found was folks were, of course, diverting a good portion of them. Yeah, meaning they sold them on the
Right.
streets, or people were using them just when they couldn't score the thing they preferred, which is not the
Right.
intent naturally. And so
Exactly.
that's frustrating too. But the truth is, if somebody wants to get clean, it really is at the right dosing. It's absolutely fantastic. I
Right.
saw people's lives change. I treated judges, attorneys. I mean, every walk of life, literally.
I'm glad you're saying that because so many people assume that drug addicts are just low life nobodies. And I
No,
used to say, no, doctors, lawyers, judges, it happens to everybody.
no. I said I don't care if you're, the president, the pope, or Jesus himself.
Yeah.
It can happen to anybody. Our bodies are set up. It's just a protective mechanism. You're
Right.
set up to your body protect. You build receptors, and the more you use, the more you need to use to get to the same end, and then this becomes a challenge.
Right.
And so, if you get the right dosing, it really does. Like I said, great drug. Just the bummer to me, and where I liked it for in my particular practice, I had a primary care practice at the time, which I loved because I could mix and mingle my folks and nobody knew why they were there. For all they knew, they were coming in for the flu or they were coming in for back pain or, a sprain or whatever. They had no idea why they were there. They were
Right.
just mixed amongst
Mhm.
where you might have a psychiatrist who only does Suboxone and then everybody knows why you're there. And then you lose again, privacy, I think is very important. I think
Yes.
it's critical in all this.
When you saw a patient that was coming in just for Suboxone treatment, did you charge them outside of their insurance because insurance didn't cover that visit? Is that
At the time, early on, we didn't charge much. I think it was something like $100 for the first visit. Wasn't very much. It's really low, only because we weren't insurance wouldn't allow it. Eventually,
right?
insurance did allow it, but they didn't in the early days. They didn't. But to be fair, I mean, that was a normal visit for kind of anything. $100, I think. I want to say it was a hundred
Yeah.
dollars for the first visit, and then 75. It was either 50 or 75 for subsequent visits. So it was
Yeah.
very manageable. It was, and it's a
Yeah.
hell. I promise you, it's cheaper than their addiction.
Yeah, we went when I took my son. It was, I guess, in 2013, the first time I'd heard about Suboxone, and we were desperate to get him help. And the doctor charged $300. The
Yep.
insurance didn't cover the office visit. And
Yep.
I wasn't allowed to go in the room with my son because he was over 18. So he comes out and tells me he's got the prescription. We got to pick it up, whatever. I didn't know anything about it. So I'm depending on my son to know what the doctor told him to do. And would you know, like a few days later, my son overdosed on Suboxone. He took too much of it. And I didn't know how much he took. I didn't know if you could overdose on it, but it was just a mess. And I called the doctor and I said, listen, I get he's over 18, but I don't know what you prescribed and how he's supposed to do this. And how am I supposed to know if he's doing the right thing? Oh, well, your son's an adult. And he was just, didn't give me any education, like educate me
Well,
on this medication you gave him.
and
The doctor was just a jerk about it,
no,
honestly.
I like for people that come with advocates because I think you need a partner. Because when you're dealing with this sort of thing, it's always helpful to have somebody. And it sounds crazy, and not to baby anybody, but it's helpful to have somebody to hold the meds so you can say, hey, that way there's also a value into asking and saying,
Right,
hey, I need my stuff. That just holds people accountable in a different way. I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but some
right,
folks do need to do that, and it
exactly.
helps. That way
And
that you've got positive control. You say, sorry.
oh, I don't know who, I think Toddie's coming back in. I don't know. But I know with my son, you mentioned people were selling, the Suboxone, and he would do that to get the heroin. He would sell his
Correct.
Suboxone.
Yep.
I think people were paying $20 a strip, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think it's 25 right now is what I've heard in Florida. But I don't
And
know.
I mean, this was years ago, so, but, so at one point I had taken them and I said, I pay for them, so I'll give it to you when you need it. You're going to
Correct.
do the right thing with it. And, he actually called the police on me and said I took his medication from him, and they made me give it back to him, because it was his and he was over
Right. And
18. And I tried to explain why I did it, but nobody wanted to hear it. And it was just a mess. I had such a bad
it's,
experience.
it's so frustrating. Like I said, again, education is everything. If we want to beat the drug wars, we've got to be proactive about, discussing it with the police, discussing it with the social workers, discussing it with the family members. It's just, it's important because there are, of course, you're always going to have people who are going to abuse things, always.
Right.
And and you can abuse anything. You can abuse muscle relaxers. You can
Right.
abuse, people abuse all sorts of things.
Right.
I mean, there was a time people were snorting Smarties. that was
I
the,
know.
I mean, that was a long time ago, but they were in fact doing that. I mean, we know what goes on with Sudafed. We
Yeah.
see
Right.
these things happen. We know what happens with the cough syrup, with the
Right,
what's it?
codeine.
No, not the codeine. The shooty duty.
Well, yeah, it's locked up in the stores now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of it's
Antihistamine. It's got the
dextromorphan.
Yeah.
If they spin that down, they can get something. People with Ambien. I had attorneys literally in the army. I'm not kidding. Attorneys in the army would snort Ambien. I'm talking
Yeah.
green suiters, like legit, like colonels, okay?
Right.
In the
Wow.
army, snorting Ambien.
Wow.
Because people just, there's always this propensity. It's there, but I think education is critical. And unfortunately, when the reps are in the middle of it and they're selling a product, of course, and
Yeah.
actually the guy who trained me, he was an addict himself, but he wasn't not drugs, that he had a different, I think he had an alcohol issue. And he actually ended up being very high up in the company. He's very honest. But I don't, over time, you get these younger trainees, they want to sell the product, they make more money. The truth is, they sell more, they make more. They train more doctors, they make more. I get that we don't get it. So, we don't get any extra incentive, whether we prescribe 1/2 or a trillion, whatever.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
matter. It makes no difference for us.
Well, some
But,
of these doctors were getting kickbacks. That's a fact.
oh, see, I don't
Some
know
of
about
these
that. I've
doctors
never
were
seen that.
getting
I've honestly,
kickbacks.
and that's the
Yeah.
honest God truth. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
And that may very well be the truth. I've just never seen it, because we're
Yeah.
not even allowed drug rep dinners anymore. The stuff we were allowed back
Yeah,
when,
well, maybe
probably.
that happened because of this, because for a fact, I mean, like there was a lot of documentaries and a lot of stories that came out over this, and they were, I'm not saying maybe they were supposed to do it, but they weren't, they were definitely, coaxing and bribing, I guess would be the word, reps, doctors into prescribing, you know.
That may very well be plausible. I've just never experienced. But to be fair, I also spent my first, 8 years after residency in the army, so things were different there.
Right. I bet for sure, for sure.
Civilians very, very different, and then depending on where your location is, Florida is a hotbed. I mean, Florida still is a hotbed for these kind of issues. With even the Oxy, we call it the Oxy Express, going down I-95. They'd send a pretty girl from West Virginia, let's just say, or Ohio, whatever. They'd scoot down. They'd hit 10 clinics, 10 pill mills in a day, get all this, and then bring it back. And
Right.
it was a
Yeah.
disaster.
Yeah. No, I definitely know that stuff was happening. Yeah, I definitely know that stuff was happening. I saw all the pill mills in Florida.
It was nuts. On the East Coast, especially. You know what was even crazier? I didn't even know this. Interestingly, OxyContin, the brand name, you can freebase. Okay. but the generic has like a gummy type thing in it, so it makes it more difficult to do so. So I thought it was fascinating, and this is intentional. They literally made the generic with better technology than the brand name. Why? Because you want to sell the brand name, right? Because it's worth more money.
Wow.
The generic's
Yeah, I
cheap.
didn't think about that.
No, but that's something I learned in about probably 2009, 2010. I didn't know that. I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. I'm like, you've got to be. I said, so you mean to tell me we have better technology for the generic, which is, pennies on the dollar versus the brand name, which is,
Right.
way. But then, of course, what does that do? The addicts want the brand name because they can, they can snort it, they can inject it, they can do a lot of different things with it that
Right.
they can't
So I
necessarily do
think
with
I
the
do
other.
have to be careful with all of this terminology. I definitely think
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
they could shut it down, and I do want it to get out there. So let's try to find different creative ways in how to ingest the stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
I
no,
don't
no,
mean
no,
to.
no, no. That's okay. I didn't tell you. But yeah, this is just really explicit because I don't want to be accused of giving people ideas either.
Oh
You know
gosh,
what I'm
no. We
saying?
definitely
Yeah.
don't want. We definitely don't want anybody doing anything. Because it's scary enough with the fentanyl now. Fentanyl's really scary. I
Oh,
mean, the fentanyl,
absolutely.
the street stuff, because that stuff, literally like a grain of salt, will kill you dead. I
Yep.
mean,
Yeah,
it,
Rebecca and I are both you know, affiliated with people that unfortunately lost their life that way. So absolutely
Yep.
totally aware of that.
it's
As
so
well as
terrifying.
people in the comments, that have, and everybody unfortunately has been somehow things have happened. So yeah, definitely aware of that. So when somebody wants help, like where do you think they should go? What is the first thing that you think that they should do? Where should they reach out? And
Well,
I'm sorry, hang on one second. Carissa, I got a gift from you. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. I want to make sure I said thank you. I don't know if I've said it before. So just so you know, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would. No, you're fine. I would reach out to a Suboxone doc, but I would definitely do your research to make because everybody's got online anymore. They've got ratings and stuff, and read the comments because they may have a 5-star rating because they give a lot of meds, and that's not
Yeah,
a
and
good
you
thing.
don't want that if you want help, right? If you
You want,
want
you want
help,
somebody who's going to give you help,
right, right, right.
What
and
about for people who can't afford to go to a Suboxone doctor? What if you have no insurance, or
I
where do
know
those people go?
well, the government, I know they're now they do have Suboxone docs that do that. I know that even Medicaid will pay for it nowadays.
Mm.
Now I can't obviously know all those places because I wouldn't know that off the top of my head, but I
No,
do know that is in fact it's thankfully it's becoming, they're pushing for this, which is good. Praise God. Um, Better than the methadone, which I'm not a big fan of. I've seen too many
no.
bad things with methadone.
Yeah.
Um, and so there are more options now. Just so you know, there is something. This sounds crazy. You're gonna think I'm nuts when I say this. It's okay. It is not the worst thing for people to pay, and let me tell you why. They have to invest something, whether it's their time, their treasure, their something. There's something about investing into the process. It's like going to the gym. Think about, if somebody gave you a free gym membership, you're less likely to go than if you're paying for it. And again, I don't think it's appropriate to charge ridiculous amounts of money where it's not feasible. But please remember that you always got to remember that you've got to give people, they have to invest something,
Yeah, they have to work towards
Right.
something. I agree with that. If
whatever
they
that
work
is. And
towards their drug addiction, they need to work towards their sobriety just as hard. I agree with that.
because
A
if you give it
million.
all for free, they don't see the value in it. They just
Yeah,
don't. We
no,
know that
and
about
it becomes
everything.
too easy, and it becomes
Right.
too easy. You know what I'm saying? It becomes, not a problem. I'll do it again. Not a problem. Didn't cost me anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, no, I
exactly.
agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree
And
with
you
you.
see that with the rehab centers in Florida. Again, same problem.
Those
You
are
have these
really
rehab.
freaking expensive, though. They don't have to be as high as they are.
No, they don't need to be absurd. They don't need to be
Right.
over the top. But sometimes it's not the worst thing for, like I said, in our case where we charged $100. I didn't think that was unreasonable, but it made them invest something. Now, I'd
Right,
have been
I
just as
agree.
happy if they invested in going to a, I don't know, going and volunteering somewhere. But I felt like they just needed to do, I think there has to be value to it. Or they think, oh gosh, well, I'll do this. And then, once I can score, I'll go score. And then when I screw up again, I'll come back. And I think that's a big issue that we deal with a lot too, is that folks, there's no incentive if it's free or if it's 100% free.
Right. Right.
So we got to
Amy,
look
I
at
don't
the
know
whole
what you
picture.
mean by that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I don't know what you mean by that. I'm sorry that you lost your brother. I am. So I used to work in a rehab. I no longer work in a rehab. So just so you know, Rebecca and I had started doing this on Mondays, just for people to talk about sobriety if it was hard to get through the week, and sobriety and surviving, because of Rebecca's, two stories, horrible stories. But the one thing that we definitely have in common was we both lost somebody to addiction, unfortunately, the same way. So we're talking about this.
Well, yeah, you've
And
got people who've got to raise
no, hang
families.
on 1 second. Yeah,
Oh,
but
sorry.
I'm talking to somebody basically in the chat. And also just so that people could reach out, that people have a safe place to come and talk if they want to. Rebecca has always offered her email if people needed to get or wanted to get in touch with her. She has more time than I do. So so we're here for that. And but if there's issues and stuff that people are going through, they need to go seek help right away. But if this conversation could give somebody strength or give somebody a place to talk or give somebody a place to be on Mondays, then that's okay with me.
Right. That's why we do it.
Yeah. So
I
I'm
mean, I
sorry.
think that's important. I do. I think I mean, it is critical to have someone because, like I said, I, as God is my witness, I learned the very most. The addicts teach me more than anybody else. I don't care. The studies, like I said, the studies are great in the beginning, but later they they tell me all the tricks. If you're honest with them, they'll be honest with you, and it's an important conversation because people have other stressors in their lives. They're raising families, they're
Absolutely.
going to a job. There's so many things going on,
Right.
Yeah,
and it's
and right now
the
things are
world's
really expensive. People are struggling. People are really
sure.
struggling right now. So I
Yeah.
don't think you meant it disrespectfully, Amy, at all. That's why I wanted to know, what you meant by what you were saying. So I don't think you meant it disrespectfully at all. So please, I hope it didn't come out that way. I just wanted to explain because I wasn't sure if you knew why we were doing this. Because you could just come this week, you know what I'm saying? So, and maybe you didn't know that this is what we do on, so that's all. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, 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 no. Please, it's like I said. It's like I said. I work in the ER now. It's my hope to get more back involved in doing this as a project with both, and then also getting people off the Suboxone, especially the ones on the higher dosage, because they are a little trickier. But there is
Right.
still, like everything else, it's there's always a way to do that. It's not insurmountable.
Are you still seeing a lot of overdose patients in the ER? Is it still happening a lot? The fentanyl, is that still happening?
We do. We have to work not so much in Alabama and Florida a lot. Yes, and it got in the richer areas of Florida, like Naples, Florida. My God, they would just dump them at the door. It was awful. It was god awful.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see as much up on the Panhandle of Florida. Um, it's very patchy because remember a lot of these drugs came out. They targeted Ohio, West Virginia, Florida were the main, starting points for a lot of these drugs, and of course they spread out naturally.
Right.
Um,
I know, I
but
thought it was funny. I know Florida was known for the drugs, and that's where the rehab was that I sent my son to. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but that's where the rehab was. And, it's
It
It's
depends on the
funny because
rehab.
yeah, we didn't have a good experience, and when I finally went there and saw where the rehab was, I thought, my God, and the employees even told me if my son were to leave rehab right outside the gate, there's somebody waiting there to sell him something. Like it just wasn't in a good place.
Well, it's
But
worse
Yeah.
than that. They actually pay them. They will actually, because if their insurance covers rehab, like let's say every, they get a 2 week break, and then they will literally pay them and give them money to relapse to go back into the rehab. It's dirty as the day is long, which is
yeah,
also frustrating.
I know. I know. I used to, my son was in and out of rehab for many years, and he would say to me, I have to have heroin in my system or they're not going to take me. And I'd say, oh, you're lying. I used to tell him he's lying. And when I got the person on the phone at one of the rehabs, I said, my son says he has to have it in his system or you're not going to take him. Well, he's right. So I'm like, oh,
He is,
I should go buy him a bag of dope then, before I put him on the plane. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing.
it's absurd. It is they'll turn them right away. If
Yeah.
they're clean on the test, they're like, oh, you're good to go.
Hmm.
And that doesn't make them good to go.
I didn't believe him though. I thought he was lying to me,
No, no, and
and
worse,
he
we
was
see
right.
that. It's craziness. Like I said,
It is.
it's hard to know where to begin on this one. Like I said, education is key, but we also got to get honest rehabs. We've got to get honest a lot of things because I just, so long as there's a huge financial incentive in these things, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, I
And
think we need to somehow stop how all this stuff is getting over here to us. That needs to stop. That's the biggest problem. The fentanyl coming in and all the dope and everything
well, a
else.
lot of it comes China via Mexico is the big.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to stop it from getting here, you know?
I mean, yeah, I agree on that. And again, that's one component, but like I said, we still have the issue of heroin and then honestly, there's people who literally will take they'll they make fake pills for folks that are made of heroin, fentanyl, and they get a pill press that
Yeah,
looks
so
like.
we're gonna start saying H now because we're using
Oh,
that word.
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
Toddie. I'm
I'm just
sorry.
sorry. I just don't. It's not the money. It's that they'll shut the video down, and it's like it
Right.
won't get out there, and it's not going to be good. So, yeah. So we'll have to just say H to that,
No,
and
H is
everybody's gonna say
fine, but they do
that.
they find like some of my patients would go to rehab and get a drug test and literally have no prescription medicine in their system. They'd have all H and F that were manufactured. Somebody would make a pill with a pill press and sell it on the streets, not knowing what the heck they were giving people.
Yeah.
It's sick.
Right. Well, and that's how we lost two people. That's how we lost the people that we lost. Does anybody have anything to say? There's a lot of stuff going on in the comments. I want to give, or the chat. I want to give people a chance to talk. I might have missed some stuff. I'm sorry. My apologies, guys. Anybody got anything? I had same doctor for 7 years. When COVID hit, you refused mandatory vaccine. Oh, so okay. That's not what that's about, but okay, that must be going on in the chat. Hmm. So now, do you teach education now, Mary?
I do as much as I can. Obviously, in the emergency room setting, like I said, we're working. With our 501(c), we're working on setting some additional things up to do more. Ideally, I'd like to go in every high school, and you know this, Toddie. I'm a little younger than you are, but not a ton younger than you are. But when we were in high school, they taught about LSD, and
Yeah,
they never talked about what was in your cabinet.
yeah,
They never,
yeah.
and there
Well,
was
and
stuff in the
listen,
cabinet.
that is and that listen, that is still what people are saying. No, they don't. They're not doing drugs. They're not doing drugs, even because they assume it's gotten from the doctor that it's not. And it's wrong. I mean, it's wrong to assume that. It becomes less dirty, I guess, because you're not getting it on the street, you're getting it from your doctor. So people think it takes the stigma away. So
Right.
Correct, and
drugs
it
are drugs are
doesn't.
drugs. Of course, drugs are drugs are drugs. And, if you're addicted, then you're addicted. You're going to do things, unfortunately, that you might not, want to do if you're, it just, but the thing is that when you go in blindsided by doctors that went ahead and prescribed stuff, why in the world is it just for money that people would go from like a 16-year-old kid that has never, been hurt, never had stitches, nothing like that before, has only had like acetaminophen, and then they have, either, maybe they have oral surgery, maybe, they get, have a root canal, or maybe they hurt their knee, and instead of going to 800 milligram Motrin, or even to something like tramadol, which is less addictive for sure, they go straight to, the oxys, like,
Well, they've
or
gotten, to be fair, they've gotten tighter on that. We're only allowed to give 3 days, which I love. The rules since about 2016, we're only
excuse
allowed to
me,
give,
are these nationwide rules or
yes, ma'am.
state rules?
Yes,
They're
ma'am. No,
nationwide.
this nationwide, we are allowed to give 3 days max. Okay.
Okay.
Unless we give certain parameters. So that helped some. It's not perfect, but it helps.
No,
Uh,
that definitely does, because You know, I mean, that definitely does help, because, you, first of all, I still think, not you, but I still think that doctors should go to something before they hit that magic pill. They should go to, 800 milligrams of ibuprofen, especially if somebody does not take, drugs, that they just don't take it. Then ibuprofen is like, that to me is like a magic pill, especially, I mean, that helped me with my period cramps, which were horrible. That was the only thing that helped me with it, and
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that those are magic pills, but that was the last thing. I was taking Percocet before I was taking ibuprofen.
well, they were way loose. We've gotten tighter, but we still need to we need to get tighter yet. Um, and then the other thing that I don't like is, this whole pain is like the fifth vital sign. This
What do you
whole, you
say?
go,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
pain is in the ER and anywhere. When you do vital signs, you get your blood pressure, your pulse. We always ask about pain. And
Right.
it's frustrating as heck for us doctors, because we're like, because now you're compelled, if you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure that there's people, does it ever come to you that you're skeptical like that? I'm sure it does, but how is it, when you just get a feeling, does that judgment cause an actual reaction, like, yeah, I'm not going to prescribe? And it's just a thought. It's not like they're high coming in there, or, they're not, overly, just something that you just get a feeling about.
Well, the beauty now that we didn't have before 2010 is we have the database, which helps. When we go to the National Practitioners Database, I can tell where anybody's got. So if somebody's,
Doctor
deep out there,
shopping. You're talking
if
about
they're
doctor
doctor shopping,
shopping.
I can know that immediately. That helps a lot. It's not perfect again, but it does help.
Well, the thing is, I'll tell you what makes it good. I'll tell you what makes it good is that it scares people enough that they don't want to do that. And also the people that are that have to take on another ID or something often have to pay for that. So, you know, and that's another charge too, a fake
Sure.
a fake prescription. So I mean, those are two things, um you
And
know
it's so tricky. And that you go to an office, you still have to, if it's a fake ID, a lot of the people can identify, it's not like going to the bar where you've got an 18-year-old looking at the, the paperwork. You're, they turn, a lot of the pharmacies will be a little more critical if somebody has an ID and it's not attached to anything. You know,
What do you
it's not
mean?
attached. It's not attached to insurance. Not attached to anything that makes sense.
Oh, I understand. I understand. Because if it's not attached to insurance, a lot of times that person's got a fake ID because most of the time things are attached to insurance.
Yeah, I'm not saying always, but that
Right,
certainly
right.
can be.
Listen, there's times that I can't, I had to, my neck hurts. And, with the sneezing, I mean, like I went through my pain medicine. So she gave me something and she couldn't give me my pain medicine. She had to give me something else, which was still a narcotic. And, like, I had to pay for that with my own money, like my insurance. They would have paid for it, but I would have had to have waited like 2 or 3 days for it to
Correct.
clear. And I'm like, I can't wait 2 or 3 days. By 2 or 3 days, my prescription's ready. Like I was only 2 or 3 days out of my prescription, but I was just in so much pain and I mean, it's difficult and I can understand completely, but I had to pay for it without my insurance, but the pharmacy knows me and they know that I have insurance. They knew what was going on. You know what I'm
Correct.
saying? But
And that helps. That helps.
yo,
If you have
absolutely, absolutely. Because I'm also the same person that waits a week to pick up the pain medicine too at times. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like
sure,
right there all the time when fill it for me. I get that. I get that.
if you
Yeah.
have a good relationship with your pharmacy, that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go to a mom and pops. I go to the mom and pops.
Yeah,
I
I like those
can't
too.
deal.
I'm a bigger fan of the mom and pops. I'm not a big fan of
Well,
CVS. Well, I shouldn't
CVS
be
is
saying it.
judgmental now. I have to say that they're really
No, they're real
judgmental.
judgy. They're terrible about it. Because I have people, to be fair, I have people who also break their femur. I mean, come on, let's be fair.
Yeah, it's
You
listen,
have
it's not, I don't
grandma.
think it's up to the pharmacist. They can double check, but it's not up to the pharmacist, in my opinion, to play policeman. Like there
Right.
are people that are in
Oh, but they
legitimate
do.
pain, and there are people that are in legitimate pain.
Correct. You get it. Yeah, like I said, grandma breaks her hip. And I mean, that's cruel.
Of course, absolutely. Of course, absolutely so. Absolutely so. I just want to text and see what's going on. Hang on with a second. But you guys could go ahead and continue talking. I just want to.
No, honestly, if it were up to me, I'd educate every medical school classroom because I didn't feel like we got enough training.
Right.
Every nursing school, I mean, I feel like it should be part of just I'm not saying a ton of time, but enough time that it's real.
Right.
And they need to train also. I'm sorry, I don't need I'm sorry. But in the facilities, in the jail facilities, because listen, they do throw them in there. And unless they could die from their withdrawal, they will let them suffer like that.
And
Hmm.
they'll
And
kill themselves. I mean, I shouldn't say, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that, but
well, they usually like take precautions for that and such, but still, you know,
but it still happens. I've seen it happen about, I mean, well, I
yeah,
shouldn't say
no,
I've
no,
seen it.
no,
I've
no,
heard of
no.
it
Yeah, 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 yeah. So
because
yeah.
they don't know when the end is in sight and it's terrifying to them.
Wow.
It really is scary.
Yeah, I
And
agree. I agree.
that's only one drug. I mean, we're not even talking about the benzos, you know, we're talking about one little class. There's a
Yeah,
whole
absolutely.
there's other stuff out there that folks, you know, it just has to be education, I think, young. And honestly, I encourage my former addicts. I think that's something they can
Give
give
me a
back to the
picture.
community.
Right.
Go around, go to the schools, go to the high school, go to the colleges, go wherever, anywhere they'll let you talk, speak out and say, look, you know, this is not something you want to mess with because
Right.
it will burn you. I promise.
I know here in New Jersey, in the school system, the police used to have, it was called the DARE program. I don't know if that's nationwide or if that was just here. And a police officer would go in and talk to the kids about street drugs and, different things. And I don't know if they still do that, but I really think they should now more than ever. But I'm not certain that they do. Do they have anything like that by you in Florida? Is that where you
Yeah,
are? You're in Florida?
I've seen it. Honestly though, it sounds crazy. I still like the former addicts, I think, because they have a story to tell. The
I
police
think,
officer may be speaking from whatever. It's
right.
it's
I
more
think that
personal.
the police could incorporate like an addict or something to go along with them and tell that side of what happens. And the police presence being in the school is always a good thing, I think, around the little
Sure.
kids. So I think if they could get someone, an addict, to go, to with the DARE program and be a part of it and tell that side of it, I think that would be great. But I don't think the schools really, I don't even know if they do the DARE program anymore. Like I said, I don't have any children in school, so I
I've
don't know.
Mine are a little bit older now, so I'm not sure. I know they did, but I don't know anymore. I know it was
Mhm.
bigger, in the 80s, 90s, that sort of
Right,
thing. It's trickier now, but like I said, I mean, it's a value, honestly, when you do have the former addict, the guys who've recovered, it's a value on both ends. It's a
right.
value of the kids, it's a value of the person to tell their story because they should be proud of their accomplishment.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. They need to, they want to share their story and let people know that they do recover, because a lot of people just, they judge and they just think they're no good and they're never going to amount to anything, and that's not always true, you know.
No, absolutely. And there's, like I said, as you, I'm sure you're aware, physicians, specifically, when all, I would say, but anesthesia was that was a big one for a long
Right.
time. Really big one that like something like 25%, a really high number, had issues because we call it the cookie jar syndrome. It's sitting right there.
Right.
And
Sorry.
so it's challenging.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I had to walk away so that she could hear me. My mom could hear me. I'm sorry, what did I miss?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying that it happened, that some of the physicians we had problems with anesthesiologists because we call it the cookie jar syndrome, where it's right there. It's you've got the drug sitting next to you every day, and all it takes is
Oh, I
something goes
see.
on,
Yeah,
and
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. It's got to be hard for people. There's a lot of people, I mean, yeah, because life is what happens to you, and then yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I agree that is. Has anybody got stuff going on in the chat and the comments? And I really appreciate you coming on, Mary. I mean, I think that we're learning a lot.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
well, I hope so. I mean, like I said, for what it's worth, I'm
What do you
thankful that
think
I learned in the early days.
what do you think about marijuana?
Now that doesn't bother. Well, actually, to be fair, my Medicare population, if I have to find something for pain, I actually go to that. Now, more the patches because they don't cross the. It's this actually, I need to look into this further. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, so it controls pain, but without causing them to be high. And so, I found some real value in that. But you got to be very cautious if you're still in the working world because if you get tested, you're going to get dinged.
Right. Well, so Rebecca's back. So I don't. It's okay. Where I live in New York, marijuana is legal, so we can. We're not. We obviously you can't go to work high. You're not supposed to go to work high, just like you're not supposed to go to work drunk. But I mean, during the day, I think up until 8 hours before you can, and so that you're gonna test positive for.
Sure. No, and you are if you do CBD because it's the same metabolite. Even since the Farm Bill of 2018, we haven't created better drug tests. So you literally use a hemp-based shampoo and test positive because of the way the metabolites work.
Or
Right.
my friend Rebecca there can have some poppy seed bagels.
Yes,
And no, but
and
that's a
test
real.
positive.
It's a real thing. Now in New
I
York,
didn't know it.
is it medical in New York, or is it just is it medical, or is it just general?
It's general now.
Okay,
It's
fair enough.
recreational as well. Yeah, it's right. Trust me, there's dispensaries you could trip over them. Thank you again, Cherokee girl. Very kind of you. Always so kind of you to do that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um,
Florida is strictly now. Alabama, it's legal, but they haven't figured out how to monetize it yet. So it's been legal since I think 2021, but they don't know what they're doing.
Well, that happened
Flor-
here in New York. That happened here in New York. It took us a few years. We were still going over to Massachusetts to get it.
Sure.
But there was always dispensaries. I mean, there's been dispensaries here for a while now that are that have been, medical. So
Sure. Okay with it. I mean, there are values for people for sleep. It's when
for
again, it's the
epilepsy,
lesser of
like
two
the
evils.
CBD, like for epilepsy and stuff like that. Am I correct? Like
Yes, absolutely, it's great.
see, yeah.
I know like I said, I do the cards in Florida, so I mean, I'm definitely it's I'd much rather that population do that than do the scarier stuff that's going to really get them in trouble, because
Right,
nobody's
right.
just out on the street like robbing somebody or holding it at gunpoint for that. They're just
Yeah, no,
kind of
they tend not to do that for marijuana.
no, they're chilling in their house, maybe eating some Doritos, I don't know, but they're not doing that. I can
Right.
promise you, we have literally, in the ER in Naples, Florida, we had a gentleman come with a bomb strapped to him, demanding one of the heavier injectables. And so
Right.
Wow.
it's real. I've had knives pulled on me. I've had guns and all those sorts of things, and
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
it's real. You don't see that with cannabis,
Right.
at least not as
Absolutely.
far as I've noticed, anyway.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, nobody ever smoked a J and went out and robbed a bank.
Not that I've heard of, but
That's true. That's very, very true.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Very wild. Very wild.
I don't. But
Um,
that said, I don't want my. You don't want your young kids. You don't want a 10, 11-year-old. You don't want kids any more than you want them drinking.
right. Can you read the comment there?
Yes. Up
So
at Alexa, I gotta look. Let me look. I've got a second device here. It may just be a different name of something, and sometimes that's the case. Let me look,
okay.
because everything's got a different name, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, that's the oil. Yes. Like I said, you'd be surprised. There's some really great products for pain, for sleep, for anxiety, even for ADHD. A lot of the children we see that are on the spectrum with autism, we
Right.
utilize these items for. We do. Um, you'd be surprised that there's definite value, and I'm not uncomfortable with that at all, because it is very different.
Right.
And it's not
No, I
nearly as.
agree.
I mean, we've had it around for gosh thousands of years, I'm sure. There's people who suggest that it's biblical. I don't know that specifically, but I've at least read that.
That's 1980 that claims that. 1980 millennial, and she's in the comments, and I bet you she would defend that.
And it may very well be, and that's okay.
I'm messing with her, man. I'm messing.
Mm.
But no, it's fine. Like I said, that's less of, because you're not seeing people cause the havoc that they do with the other.
And
You're
like
not
you
seeing people's
said, there
lives
is
ruined.
benefit. Like you said, there is benefit in it. You know what I mean? There is benefit in it.
Sure. And you don't see families ruined. You don't see people like literally giving up their whole world for this one thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's not as desperate, is it? It's definitely not as
No,
desperate.
definitely not. You don't see people, they don't go through withdrawals. The only issue we've seen with cannabis is you can get a cannabis overdose. Now you do get, it's a very specific person. They usually have low body fat. It's usually a 25-year-old guy, skinny guy, who doesn't have much body fat, who's just superseded his receptors, and they get very sick. And they do this interesting thing. They shower cyclically, so they'll shower like every 20 minutes, because what'll happen is it pushes the THC out of their bloodstream into their fat temporarily, because the vessels constrict. Think about it. It's basic physiology.
Right.
Vessels constrict, it pushes out, so they feel better for 10, 20 minutes, and then they feel back to crap again. And then they get back in the shower. So it's a very easy thing to diagnose, because they behave in a certain manner. But we don't see this very often, and that's another item that we're kind of working. Like, my husband's in the medical field too, and he's also he studied chemical engineering, and we're looking at a means to sort of detox that more quickly than it, because it's, as you know, it can stay in your system a long time. Just for the purposes in the ER, when you have those situations, you want people to feel better, of course, without putting them on another drug. To me, that's the worst case scenario.
What do you think about kratom?
Kratom, I hate. Don't do it. Kratom, I do not like at all. Please, 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 please. Kratom's a terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Can you expand on that?
Okay, yes. Kratom is another one that's like they use like in Africa. It's another similar, I think it's in the family of antidepressants, except it has opioid properties. But these folks take boatloads of it. I mean, nobody takes just one kratom. They take like 20 a day. And then that same stuff with that Zaza, what they call hillbilly, I think it's gas station H. No, please don't. Kratom is very dangerous. Initially, it helps folks. They'll say they have more energy, they feel good, but it's one of those ones that turns on you. At least that's what the addicts. I've never used it, obviously, but my addicts have told me that. I said, don't mess with that. They said, coming off of kratom is way worse than coming off of the H. So
that's what I've heard that as well. And kratom, believe it or not, Rebecca, kratom is something that you could buy over the counter at the smoke shop.
Oh,
anybody could go in there with a valid ID and over the counter and buy kratom. And this is how dangerous that is. And I only know about kratom because I had a friend that used to like smoke weed, and I guess he used to take some pills on occasion. And he told me about kratom, and then I looked into it, and a lot of people take kratom to get off of opiates.
Correct. But then, like I said, kratom has a tendency to turn on you, and it's...
No, I believe you. Yeah. So I think that's great that we're letting people know that. See, that's why I think conversation is kratom's legal where I am too, Amy.
And Zaza is the other one.
Florida, kratom is legal. I think you could get it in smoke shops, right?
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely can in Florida. You cannot in Alabama. You can't.
8. So what is Delta 8? Go ahead with the kratom.
Okay, Delta 8. Okay, Delta 8 is part of the cannabis plant. That was what the Farm Bill. Delta 8's fine. That's not a big deal, but it will make... Now, if you have a type of job that you get tested, you will test hot. Like I said, any part of the plant, it doesn't matter, because it's all the same metabolite. Whether it's one that's good for you, like CBD, well, good for you in the traditional sense. It doesn't matter. So Delta 8's fine. Delta 8's great. But again, you just got to be, if you're in a place where they're going to discriminate at your workplace, you better be very careful.
So, what's the difference between Delta 8 and regular weed?
Okay. Delta 8, they state as equivalent to like what they would call 70s and 80s weed. Delta 9 is
that was pretty good weed back in the day. Skunk weed. We used to call it skunk weed.
Oh, I don't know.
Ganja.
Yeah, and then Delta 9 is true cannabis, it's THC. And then Delta 10 is a different part of the plant altogether, somewhere between the two. But most folks do either Delta 8's over the counter everywhere. because that was part of the Farm Bill of 2018.
So here's a question: What are what are your thoughts on microdosing to help with addiction? Does it work with the brain, or is that a myth?
It can help with the sleep issues. I think, interestingly, and you're going to think I'm crazy again on this one, I like the idea of ketamine we use. Interestingly, microdosing, mind you, we use it actually for our sickle cell folks, because a lot of sickle cell folks end up with addiction for obvious reasons. They have a very painful diagnosis. And
Right.
what we found is we can give them ketamine and it resets the receptors. Not that that's perfect, but it, you know, and it's just tricky to discuss with somebody who's not been an addict. But in the early days when they could get their pain relief with a lower amount of whatever, whether it's the low level stuff or it basically resets the receptors. And it works actually extremely well for depression and other things. And PTSD, actually, it's very interesting. The ketamine is become, they started talking about that a bunch in 2018, but then when the pandemic happened, of course, we started getting very focused on that. And then that kind of, but there's still ketamine clinics. But again, we're not talking about the huge dosages like in anesthesia. We're talking baby dosages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, ketamine did kill Matthew Perry, but that was massive amounts, and that's a different story. It's a
He
different
was
story. I'll just say
abusing
that.
it. He was abusing it.
And he had a
That's
huge amount. He
Yeah.
had the anesthesia amount, not the little amount. Again, we're talking micro.
Right. It is a horse tranquilizer.
That is correct.
Right.
Mhm.
But again, we're talking we're talking 1/1000th, let's say, or 1/10,000, whatever. We're talking tiny amounts, controlled
Yeah.
environment.
Right.
But it does reset the receptors, and it was working for Matthew Perry, to be fair. But we don't know the whole story on that one. He got into more of it than he was supposed to. I'll just say
Yes,
that.
absolutely. And people took advantage of him.
Yeah,
Correct.
they
Absolutely
did.
correct.
Yeah, people took advantage of him. They thought, what the hell? Once again,
Yep,
So,
they figured
the
he had
thing
the
is,
money.
but here's the thing. Here's a hot topic. What's the difference between those drug pushers and the ones that are coming from the white collars in their
Not
Maseratis
a
and
not a damn
Teslas
thing. Not a
Right.
damn
and
thing.
all that? The people that are saying it's not addictive, and the more you sell, the more money I'll make. What's the difference, right?
Correct. Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't see the difference.
Right. So, except one doesn't go to prison and the others do.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And we've got, well, there's other, I'll just say there's other entities that we perceive as being our helpers in this country that are not our helpers.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't talk about that, obviously.
Right,
Um,
right.
but there's people that we perceive as our police of sorts that are very much into they just don't, the only issue they have with the cartel is that they're not getting the money. And that's
I
unfortunate.
understand. Yeah, no, I agree though. It's I agree. I agree.
It really is terrifying. I mean, if you have children, I mean, or, anybody who has loved ones, it's scary. It's a scary world for these kids.
Yeah.
So I feel there's a big difference between shrooms and ketamine.
No, we're doing shrooms too. We are doing psilocybin. In fact, I interestingly talked to a psychiatrist who was a very traditional psychiatrist. She was probably 70. I said, look, you really need to go to a conference. And I got this lady, I got her back, and now she's doing, she's prescribing cannabis. She's doing psilocybin. We're doing all these ketamine. We're doing all these great things. Again, microdosing, they work extremely well for people with PTSD, bipolar, a lot of great research on this stuff.
I actually have heard about that as far as the ketamine, and there was the other one.
The shrooms is just the
I did.
psilocybin is all. That's the major component of it.
Yeah, here's the thing. The bottom line is, the reason why these are being prescribed is to help people feel better so that they could go on with their day.
Sure.
And then they unfortunately take it one step further and to be happy
Well,
all the
that's
time. We can't be happy all the
correct.
time.
Correct.
Right.
Now, another one you need, again, Zaza, I mentioned earlier, that is TIANE tenazepam. That's another antidepressant used in other countries. You can look that up. There's tons of articles. It's dangerous as all get out. You don't want to mess with that either. Very, very, very dangerous.
Wow. Wow.
And
Wow.
very, very, very addictive. People take 20 pills a day of this. Very
Wow.
scary.
What do
They
you
call it
think?
Zaza.
That's called what?
Zaza.
Oh,
Zaza.
yeah, you had mentioned, didn't you say that that was like a drugstore H? Didn't you just say that?
Yes,
Or no?
that's correct. Yes, that's
Mhm.
correct.
Right. Wow. What do you think about that stuff that people do at ceremonies and stuff? What's that stuff? It gets you sick, but like you, I guess you
Oh,
hallucinate from it.
yeah, I don't know that much. To be fair, I don't know that much about that.
What's that called? It's
I
called
know what
some
you're talking about. It's where is it?
Asawaski or something
Yeah,
weird like that.
Ostrawoski. Yeah, I don't.
I
To be
know
fair,
I'm
I don't.
not saying it right, but it's close.
No, you're correct. I don't. To be fair, I don't know that much about it.
Ayahuasca or something like that. Amy
Yeah,
said
I know they have like they do some weird like
ceremonies and stuff.
ceremony,
Yeah.
but I don't. To be fair, that's less common. I don't know that much about it.
Right. Well, this is really fascinating, to be honest with you. This is really fascinating, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. And I think it's important that people know what's going on. You know, Rebecca, what do you got? You're very quiet today.
I'm just taking all this in. I'm learning a lot.
Okay.
Definitely. And the ketamine thing, the only time I ever had any experience with that was when Gino had the skateboarding accident, I think I told you about. And they were trying to reset his arm without surgery, and they gave him the ketamine. And then the next time I heard about it again was with Matthew Perry. I didn't realize they use it for, whatever therapy or something. I didn't know that until, I guess, Matthew Perry, that story came out, but it's interesting.
Way bigger doses again. Way bigger. We used to with kids use ketamine. I actually like a different drug for resetting arms, but it's not addictive. It's an amnesic, so you forget what you get about 12 minutes to do whatever you need to do.
Mhm.
And it works very, very well. It has no street value, so not as far as I can't imagine. I don't know why anybody would want to use it, but
Right.
but yeah, but for children, they do some places ketamine is part of their protocol.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, it has to have street value. I mean, Matthew Perry was paying a lot of money
No,
for.
that one
Yeah.
I was saying the other one I use it doesn't. What
Oh,
I
okay,
use is something called etomidate, which is just I'll just put you to sleep. So
okay,
unless you want to go to
okay.
sleep, I guess for 12 minutes,
Okay.
that doesn't get you. There's no like,
Right,
to
benefit
my
other
knowledge, there's
than
no
that,
happy feeling
right.
or anything weird like that. To my
Wow.
knowledge.
Wow. So let me ask you this, and this totally off topic, but not really. So semi off topic, but not really. So, um, two things. So I don't know. Um, do you know anything about the Gypsy Rose case?
I do. I
Okay.
do. I
Well,
follow
I'm
that
gonna
one closer than
the
anything
question.
else. I'm
Okay, so
probably I follow everything. That's actually interesting to me because I did my residency paper on factitious disorders. This was in
oh,
2000. So I know a lot about Munchausen's and malingering.
wow. So what do you think professionally about what do you think? Do you think Gypsy was a survivor or victim of Munchausen by proxy, or do you
Oh
think that
no. She's a cold malingerer. I haven't. I don't
not
buy
our
the whole.
Gypsy,
I do not
not
buy
our
the whole
Gypsy?
narrative of this whole. I started faking that I to be fair, you can have a seizure and become paralyzed, but that lasts a couple of days. I forget what it's called. Todd syndrome is what it's called. Todd's paralysis. And that can happen. But for her to fake it for what, a decade or longer, I call, you know what I call on that.
Right. Okay.
That's nonsense. I don't know why she's bringing that up. I think in fact,
Well,
I know she's a sociopath.
I'll tell you why she brought it up, because it came out in the FOIAs. That's the only reason why she brought it up, was because it came out in the FOIAs and she felt like she had to address it.
But I don't know why she would have brought it up to Nick. It was easier to sell her if she was. The truth is, if she
gets herself and she can't get out of her own way. I mean, that's a whole other sickness she has.
If she was truly being abused, she would have mentioned that to Nick. That would have been the first thing she would have said.
Of course.
Because incidentally, and this is another crazy thing, I have a child on the spectrum. So I have a son who's 12 on the spectrum. And so I know a good bit about that too. But actually, I oddly learned about that before, because in the Army, that was very prevalent, more so than the common, community. It was, if let's say, this is back in like 2003 or something, it was 1 in 150 then. Of course, it's considerably higher now. And so if you're going to manipulate someone on the spectrum, they're very black and white. And so just discussing abuse would have been sufficient for him to convince him. So to bring out this whole, it doesn't make sense to me, because why would she tell him that I'm faking? She basically, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, like,
at least not to me.
The video that I put out today, basically, had said that Nick definitely felt more guilt about and more remorse about unaliving Dee Dee.
For sure.
And that was because he knew that at some point she was, that she was a good mom to Gypsy. So where did he get that information? Obviously from Gypsy, right?
Correct.
So,
he was manipulated. She's a sociopath. I mean, we know she's a little budding sociopath. She's been a sociopath probably. I mean, I remember watching videos of her cheerleading at like 4 or 5 years old, and she's laying on the ground. They're videoing her like this is like, oh, parents don't do that. I have 6 kids. You know, when you video your child when they're doing their best work, not when they're laying on the ground, rolling around, pouting.
Right.
And so the fact that nobody was correcting her suggests that this was normal behavior for her. And so,
let me ask, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue on.
It suggests to me that it's normal behavior.
So let me ask you, do you think that Gypsy had, a drug problem when she went into prison like she's claiming that she did? Do you think she did? Because I think that she made that shit up, especially when she talked about
I think she was a low-level user. I think she might have been a low-level user is all. She didn't know enough about, I mean, she'd have been sick as crap if she was a high-level user.
Right? I think she gave drugs away for favors.
She was trading. That's what I think with the other people in that little community. I believe the drug trade was part of their whole cosplay or whatever they were doing. I think the drug issue was a factor, but I think it was a trading factor, is my guess.
Right. Well,
because Dan Gladwell, she apparently went to his place with like a bottle of 90 oxys or something. I don't know.
Right.
Allegedly, again, but no, her issues are. She's very fascinating because she's a sick pup.
Oh yeah, no joke. Rebecca's fascinated by her for sure.
I just wish somebody would tell her to stop doing those stupid TikTok videos dancing, because she has no rhythm. She looks ridiculous. If I were her mother, which, well, her mother can't tell her because she got rid of her. But
saying that because I like you. I want you to hang around for a little bit. Like her mom, you can't do that because her mom tried to correct her, and look at what happened.
Exactly.
But she has no self-awareness. That's part of that's part of her sociopathy. She lacks self-awareness.
Yeah.
And I feel like with her baby, I don't know about you guys, but like when I'm holding my granddaughter, it's genuine, it's real. Gypsy looks very stiff and uncomfortable.
I was just
Sure.
gonna
And
say that.
that's her child. How, I mean, when Brianna holds Eliana, you know, it's not, she's not stiff and uncomfortable. I don't understand that. Like, does she
Because she
not?
has there's no attachment. There's no
I
attachment.
don't think she's with the baby that much. I think she gets a
I
lot
don't
of
think
help.
she is.
You know,
Yeah,
other
I
but she
think
people
that,
are
also is
doing
not,
it.
yeah.
she lacks attachment. The baby's like a toy you put up on a shelf. It's like, you know, the little
It's a
dog you put in
prop.
your
It's a
purse.
prop that she
Yeah,
puts online that said she wouldn't put online.
Right.
right,
Yeah, she
correct.
wasn't going to, and then yet she did.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But
it's just another little, it's no different than anything else she has in her life that she has to carry around, and it is a prop. I mean, you know, she feels like I'll put this, and I think it's humorous that she thinks, oh, babies are going to sleep. I think she really believed they'd sleep all day for the first 5 years or most of the day.
Yeah,
And she's kind of
yeah,
getting a reality check on that one.
yeah.
yeah, I don't think she thought it through. It was just more for like
To
the
keep Ken or
publicity.
something, or attention or something.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, I don't
impulsive.
know.
It's the impulsivity.
No, because she's wanted one.
Well,
She's
no, for
wanted a
sure.
baby. She's always wanted a baby. That's what, like, the thing is that she didn't really want a kid. She wanted a baby per se, is what I'm hearing, you know?
Sure. And because she has no idea what that means. She never
Right.
babysat children. She was never around children. She was
No, and I put a
spoiled.
video out that too. Like, where was she supposed to learn this from?
No,
Right.
she never babysat. I
You
mean, come
know,
on.
so come on. Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
saw someone, I don't know who it was, posted a video. They saw Gypsy and Ken and the baby out somewhere shopping or something, and they videoed them for a few seconds. But
They were coming back from Cheesecake Factory, apparently. Gypsy was wearing a girdle. It was made to believe she was wearing a girdle, but she said something about her shoes being too big or something. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm
oh,
But
I
sorry.
she's
don't know.
walking funny or something. Yeah, she's got her issues are she's so dangerous. So dangerous.
And she has a baby.
Yep. Yep. I
So
agree.
dangerous.
Scary,
That's
very
it's
scary.
terrifying.
Yeah. I agree.
I
Guys,
wouldn't trust her.
I am gonna have to call this one early because I gotta go to sleep and I still have to go and pay for the trailer and go to the bank and all that stuff, but I have to
Oh
go to sleep
boy.
Oh,
before I
no
can
worries. I
do
gotta go to
that.
sleep too. I gotta work tonight. So
Yeah.
All right.
But
Well, I'm glad we did this again. I enjoy it every week. And I learned a lot. Like I said, I was just taking it all in. There was,
right,
I learned a
right.
lot
well,
today.
hopefully, like I said, I'm sure there's people who know way more than I do, but I've learned enough over 25 years,
No,
being in
definitely,
medicine.
definitely, definitely. And so appreciated, just absolutely appreciated. You know what I'm
But no
saying?
problem. Like I said, anytime I'm happy to, like I said, like I said, I don't like to show my face just because I'm still practicing and it's tricky.
Right, right, right,
If
right.
I
Yeah,
say
I get it.
something wrong, I don't want to get in trouble. And, but anyway, I'm happy to help any way I can.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
glad you
Well,
came on.
and I thank you, and Rebecca, I thank you. I gotta go to sleep here.
Go to
I'm
bed.
falling asleep. All right, guys, and I thank everybody in the comments. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you again next Monday for Monday Talks. And it's an open panel, guys. So anybody that's got a story, please, anybody that can offer some, advice, please. It's so great. I appreciate it. Again, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you
Yep, thank
guys
you,
in the
Toddie.
chat. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. All right, guys.
All
Okay.
right, everyone
Thanks.
have a great day.
You
All right.
too. All
Bye-bye.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.